Make a bunch of car noises. All right. Hey everyone, this is Dan from SPE Motorsport. On this week's product spotlight, we're going to go over our 2020 plus Shelby GT500 Mustang fuel rail system that we came up with. It's a fuel rail kit. We're going to kind of go over why we did it and the reason for doing all the design pieces that we came up with, and basically what benefits for the car to run these. So I'm going to kind of start with the aesthetics of the kit. We wanted to do something that kind of made it still aesthetically pleasing on the car, because some of the other kits on the market have hoses running all over the place and things just don't flow well. You know, you spend that kind of money on a car like a GT500, you kind of want everything to look as it should under the hood and clean, simple, you know, well placed. So we took that was a huge thing that we took into account on top of the performance aspect. These cars, once you start kind of pushing them over, you know, 700 horsepower to the tire, which that's pretty much where they're at factory. You need to look at more volume in the fuel rails because of how the factory fuel rails are fed by the fuel system. They tee in the side of the factory fuel rail, and then they're distributed and it crosses over to the other rail. Well, the way that system is, it's kind of a pinch point, and there's not a lot of fuel flow in those types of scenarios. So obviously the more power you make, the more fuel flow that you need. Our rails are hard anodized, so they're safe with E85, race gas, pump gas, you know, whatever you want to run as far as fuel goes. So that's one of the key things. The other thing that we did is we made a Y block specifically for the GT500. So this goes on where the factory, onto the firewall, where the factory fuel hose runs from the firewall to the factory fuel rail. This Y is specifically designed for this car, and it essentially goes right on it right on the factory line on the firewall, and immediately terminates into two -8 feed lines to run to the fuel rails. So the nice thing about doing it that way is you don't have to adapt it, come out with a hose and then Y the hose again, and then you have this bushel of hoses all over the, you know, underneath the hood. So it kind of keeps everything compact. There's only 2 fuel hoses that you'll get with the kit, which are Fragola made -8, pre-made, you know, proper length for the car and our system. So we'll kind of show you up close here some of the design features of the rails themselves. So as you can kind of see, some of the basic things on these rails, you'll notice right off the bat are the mounts are billet. We did not do a stamped steel or a laser cut and bent steel mount. We did a billet mount, just once again for aesthetic reasons. They are a -8 fuel rail, so the full volume of the rail is actually larger than -8 inside, but it has a -8 ORB for the feed fitting, which point towards the back, plug on the front. It does take the factory fuel pressure sensor. It has the proper ORB style fitting, or I should say machined bung to take the factory ORB style thread and seal, O-ring seal on the sensor, and obviously that goes in there. The one thing that we did change in the design and the mounting position of the sensor is we actually made an angle on the rail that placed the sensor in a better position. We'll actually show you that on the car here in a minute. But we changed the angle of the sensor because even from the factory, there's a wiring harness that runs through here, and it pretty much lays right against that wiring harness. So we wanted to keep it up off of that, keep it more open, easier to access, And obviously we did add another port if you want to run another fuel pressure sensor, fuel pressure switch, just want to, you know, a place to put a gauge, whatever. On this side, you can do that. This is a driver's side rail. On the passenger side rail, it kind of mirrors it. You can see there's the factory fuel pressure sensor fitting. Basically what we do is we mirror the rail. But the nice thing is you still have your other fuel pressure tap on the passenger side of the car. So if you want to run nitrous solenoid, you know, fuel supply to a nitrous wet kit or something like that, you have that option on both rails. It kind of leaves it open to, you know, keep everything open to many options as far as adding horsepower or whatever you want to do with the car. Obviously, you know, the mounts, the one cool thing we did is a single mount. You would think that this tab would swivel, but it actually doesn't. It's a pretty simple, actually I'll just take this one off, it's already loose. It's a pretty simple design, but what it does is it allows the billet part to locate, and we actually have a locator that's milled into the top of the rail, and it allows it to locate and lock in with just one single bolt. Once again, it's kind of a dumb thing, but we wanted to keep everything as aesthetically pleasing as possible, and in my opinion, the fewer amount of bolts that are on it, the better. So what we'll do now that you kind of have an idea of what the rails look like and what we were kind of going for on the setup, is we'll show you the best that we can on the car, and we'll kind of go over like how everything's tucked away and if we can even see it, because we get the system tucked pretty well. But we'll go over to the car now. Now that we're over at the car, you can kind of see, looking from a normal position with the hood open, there's pretty much no external fuel line showing. You can't really tell that this car has rails on it. And that's something I think should be taken into account with a car like this caliber. You spend this type of money, you don't want anything taken away from the engine. What we'll do is we'll start with showing you where the Y is on the firewall back here. This is where your fuel line comes up the firewall. That's where the Y actually starts at. Locks on there. It's a O-ring Y, you know, the 2-8 hoses. That's where that's at there. And then off of that, the 2-8 hoses go to the rear of the fuel rails behind the engine, and they're all exact length. And the cool thing that we did with the Y as well is, I'm sorry, not the Y, but the hoses, the cool thing that we did is they are the exact same length. So it actually helps keep everything kind of even, being that this is not a return style fuel system in factory form. And then up from there, you can kind of see here where the pressure sensor is on the rail and how close it is here to the wiring harness. And the factory one actually pretty much lays on this. So we wanted to correct that, and you obviously gain a lot of access to that. And then the auxiliary port you can see there. And then moving to the other side, it's essentially the same thing, but you're able to use that fuel pressure port there as an auxiliary port for fuel pressure, pressure switch, you know, anything from data logging to, you know, running a nitrous solenoid. So I pretty much covered it. All right, guys, now that we kind of got to see what they look like on the car and where we were going with the design process of it, the other thing that I wanted to throw in there is that, being that these rails do have a -8 ORB thread and O-ring set up on each end of it, this rail system is easily adaptable to a return style fuel system at a later date. So if you decide that, you know, you're going well beyond the power level of the factory fuel pumps and you want to upgrade the car later on, these rails are very adaptable and allow you to do that. So that pretty much covers it on this week's product spotlight for the 2020 plus Shelby GT500 Mustang fuel rail setup that SPE makes. These are available on the website, and if you have any questions, you can email us, call. We'd be more than happy to, you know, answer any of your questions, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.